A 40-year-old mother, a 9-year-old child, and a cross-country road trip shrouded in mystery. When maternal instinct transforms into a killer's barrel, what truly unfolded in the mind of Ashlee Buzzard? This is not just another murder investigation. This is a story about the ultimate betrayal, where the hands that should have protected became the hands that destroyed, where a mother's love twisted into something unrecognizable and unforgivable. Before we dive into this haunting case, subscribe to our channel to stay updated on every development in this story and other true crime cases covered with the depth and respect they deserve. In the vast expanse of the American West, where desert highways stretch endlessly toward distant horizons, October 2025 began like any other autumn month. Children returned to school with fresh notebooks and new backpacks. Families planned Halloween costumes, and the rhythm of daily life continued its familiar beat. But in the small coastal city of Lompoc, California, a darkness was quietly unfolding that would soon shock the nation and leave investigators grappling with one of the most disturbing cases of maternal filicide in recent memory. This is the story of Melodee Buzzard, a 9-year-old girl whose life was cut tragically short. Melodee Buzzard was a typical 9-year-old girl growing up in Lompoc, a city of approximately 43,000 residents situated along California's central coast. Those who knew her described a child full of life, attending her local elementary school where teachers and classmates had grown accustomed to her presence in their daily routines. Like many children her age, Melodee's world revolved around school friendships and the simple joys of childhood. She lived with her mother, Ashlee Buzzard, a 40-year-old woman who had been raising Melodee as a single parent. The details of Melodee's father remain limited in public records, though court documents would later reveal he had passed away years before the events of 2025, leaving Ashlee as Melodee's sole guardian and protector. Ashlee Buzzard's own childhood had been marked by trauma and instability. At the age of 9, the same age Melodee would be at the time of her death. Ashlee had experienced her own crisis. She had fled with her mother to escape domestic violence, living homeless and on the run. This anniversary trauma, this haunting parallel between mother and daughter, both facing life-altering circumstances at the identical age, would later become a point of psychological analysis for those attempting to understand what transpired. Financial difficulties plagued Ashlee in the years leading up to 2025. Records indicate she struggled with debt and the challenges of single parenthood. But nothing in the public record, nothing in the observations of neighbors or school officials could have predicted what was about to occur. In early October 2025, Ashlee Buzzard made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events culminating in tragedy. She planned a road trip, a journey that would take her and 9-year-old Melodee across state lines, traversing the diverse landscapes of the American Southwest. On or around October 9, 2025, mother and daughter were last seen together near the Utah-Colorado border, a remote region characterized by vast stretches of high desert towering red rock formations and highways that can go miles without encountering another human soul. What conversations took place during that journey? What thoughts occupied the mind of a mother as she drove with her young daughter through those lonely expanses? These questions would haunt investigators in the weeks to come. The first undeniable sign that something was catastrophically wrong came on October 10, 2025. On this date, Ashlee Buzzard returned alone to her home in Lompoc, California. She drove up in the rental vehicle she had used for the trip, stepped out and returned the car to the rental agency. The rear seat, where a child's car seat or belongings might typically be found, was empty. Melodee was nowhere to be seen. Most chilling of all, Ashlee did not report her daughter missing. She did not contact law enforcement. She did not reach out to family members in panic. She simply resumed her life in Lompoc as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Days turned into weeks. Melodee's absence from school began to raise red flags among educators, who noticed the extended, unexplained absence. It was the school's welfare check request, prompted by Melodee's prolonged absence, and the lack of any communication from her mother regarding homework or educational materials, that first brought official attention to the situation. When authorities attempted to investigate Melodee's whereabouts, they encountered a wall of silence and non-cooperation from Ashlee. Her behavior grew increasingly bizarre. In one particularly disturbing incident that would later be documented in police reports, Ashlee was observed dressing a pillow in children's clothing, apparently attempting to create the illusion that Melodee was present in the home. For 60 agonizing days, the search for Melodee Buzzard consumed investigative resources across multiple states. Law enforcement agencies in California, Utah, and Colorado coordinated efforts following up on any potential leads. Ashlee's complete lack of cooperation, her strange behavior, and her apparent indifference to her daughter's disappearance made her an immediate person of interest, but without a body. Without concrete evidence of a crime, investigators faced significant challenges in building a case. The breakthrough, when it came, arrived through sheer chance in one of the most desolate corners of the American West. On December 6, 2025, 2 photographers were exploring the remote terrain near Caneville, Utah, a tiny unincorporated community in Wayne County, with a population numbering in the dozens. Caneville sits in a landscape of stunning but harsh beauty, surrounded by the kind of wilderness where a person could travel for hours without seeing another soul. The photographers, seeking to capture the raw magnificence of the Utah desert instead, discovered something that would forever change their lives. In a secluded area, far from any main road, they found a body in an advanced state of decomposition. Local authorities were immediately notified. The location itself told a story of deliberate concealment. This was not a spot someone would stumble upon by accident. It required intentional travel off established routes, a conscious decision to venture into terrain where discovery would be unlikely. On December 8, 2025, the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Office in California received notification about the discovery. The physical description and circumstances suggested a possible connection to the missing Melodee Buzzard, but confirmation would require forensic analysis. The wait for DNA results felt interminable for investigators who had spent weeks searching for the missing child. Finally, on December 22, 2025, the news they had dreaded was confirmed. DNA testing positively identified the remains as those of 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard. But the manner of death revealed something even more horrifying than investigators had anticipated. This was not a case of abandonment or accidental death. This was not a tragic outcome of neglect or a moment of panic. The autopsy results were unambiguous and deeply disturbing. Melodee Buzzard had been shot multiple times in the head at close range. The nature of the wounds, the placement, the proximity of the shooter to the victim, all pointed to an execution-style killing. This was an act of deliberate, calculated violence. For a child to be killed in this manner spoke to a level of cold-bloodedness that chilled even veteran homicide investigators. The use of a firearm was particularly notable. In cases of maternal filicide, the killing of a child by their mother weapons such as guns are statistically rare. Research in criminal psychology shows that mothers who kill their children typically use methods perceived as less violent, such as suffocation, drowning, or strangulation. The use of multiple gunshots to the head represented an anomaly, a departure from typical patterns that made this case all the more disturbing. As investigators worked to piece together what had happened, they began assembling a timeline and collecting physical evidence that would prove crucial to the case. On December 17, 2025, 5 days before the DNA confirmation, but after the body had been discovered, law enforcement executed search warrants on Ashlee Buzzard's residence and vehicle. What they found provided the tangible link between mother and crime scene that prosecutors would need. Shell casings recovered from both Ashlee's home and her vehicle were subjected to ballistic analysis. The results were damning. These shell casings matched with forensic certainty the shell casings found at the crime scene in Utah, where Melodee's body had been discovered. But the physical evidence went beyond ballistics. Investigators uncovered signs of premeditation that suggested this was not a spontaneous act of violence, but rather a carefully planned crime. Among Ashlee's possessions, authorities found wigs indicating possible intent to alter her appearance. Documentation showed she had changed the license plates on her vehicle, an action that would make tracking her movements more difficult and complicate any cross-state investigation. The choice of location for the disposal of Melodee's body, that remote stretch of Utah wilderness, so far from any casual observer, demonstrated geographic knowledge and careful planning. The evidence painted a picture of a woman who had methodically prepared for what she was about to do. She had selected a location where discovery would be unlikely. She had taken steps to potentially disguise her identity and her vehicle. She had armed herself with a firearm and ammunition. And at some point during that October road trip, at some moment in those vast expanses between California and Utah, Ashlee Buzzard had made the decision to end her daughter's life in the most violent way imaginable. Criminal psychologists and forensic experts examining the case were confronted with the question that haunts all cases of filicide. What could drive a mother to kill her own child? While the investigation focused on evidence and facts rather than speculation, certain patterns in Ashlee's history and behavior suggested potential contributing factors. Though these remain theories rather than established motives, the anniversary trauma of her own childhood crisis at age 9, occurring at the same age as Melodee at the time of her death, represented a psychological parallel that could not be ignored. Some experts in trauma and criminal psychology theorized that Ashlee might have been re-experiencing her own childhood pain through her daughter, though this remains speculative. Financial pressures appeared to have been mounting. Records indicated Ashlee had been struggling with debt and the challenges of single parenthood. In some cases of filicide, parents kill their children as a way of escaping the responsibilities of parenthood, viewing the child as an obstacle to freedom or financial stability. The loss of Melodee's father years earlier meant Ashlee bore the full weight of parental responsibility alone, a burden that some individuals find overwhelming. Whether these factors played a role in her actions or whether other psychological issues were at work may never be fully understood. What remains undeniable is the action itself and its devastating outcome. The morning of December the 23rd, 2025, brought the case to its legal culmination. Law enforcement officers arrived at Ashlee Buzzard's residence in Lompoc, armed with an arrest warrant for first-degree murder. They had to force entry to apprehend her. When Ashlee Buzzard was taken into custody, those present noted her demeanor with a mixture of professional detachment and personal unease. She showed no visible signs of remorse. There were no tears, no breakdowns, no emotional displays one might expect from a mother being arrested for killing her child. Witnesses described her as appearing defiant, almost arrogant, as she was led away in handcuffs. In a detail that struck many as particularly jarring, she wore high-heeled shoes during her arrest and processing. Throughout the initial proceedings, Ashlee exercised her right to remain silent, offering no explanation, no justification, no expression of grief for the daughter she had lost. The charges filed against Ashlee Buzzard reflected the severity and premeditated nature of the crime. She was formally charged with first-degree murder, the most serious homicide charge under California law. First-degree murder requires proof that the killing was willful, deliberate, and premeditated, meaning the perpetrator consciously decided to kill and had time to reflect on that decision before acting. The evidence collected by investigators, the shell casings, the wigs, the altered license plates, the remote location, all supported the argument that this was indeed a carefully planned execution, rather than a spontaneous act of violence or a tragic accident. The facts remain stark and unchanging. In October 2025, 9-year-old Melodee Buzzard left on a road trip with her mother. She never returned. Her body was discovered in a remote Utah desert with multiple gunshot wounds to the head. Evidence points to Ashlee Buzzard as the alleged perpetrator. The legal process will now determine her guilt or innocence, and if convicted, the consequences she will face. This case serves as a haunting reminder of the vulnerability of children and the sacred trust placed in parents to protect and nurture rather than harm. It challenges our fundamental assumptions about maternal love and forces us to confront the reality that sometimes the greatest danger to a child comes not from strangers but from those closest to them. As a society, we must remain vigilant in protecting the most vulnerable among us and ensure that systems are in place to identify and intervene when children are at risk, even when that risk comes from within their own homes. We invite you to share your thoughts on this case in the comments below, keeping the discussion respectful and fact-based as we remember Melodee Buzzard and seek to understand how such tragedies might be prevented in the future. Subscribe to our channel to follow further developments in this case and to explore other true crime stories that reveal the complex and often troubling realities of criminal behavior in our society. Thank you for watching, and please remember that behind every case we examine, there are real victims, real families, and real communities forever changed by violence and loss.